Welcome to Power Your Story podcast. This is Open Mic Thursday.
Okay, the Mandela effect is an instance of false memory, basically, which means some people remember different things than other people do. Like the KitKat symbol had a dash in between Kit and Kat, or if it was the Bernstein or Bernstein bears. So it's kind of like having a memory of something that never actually happened.
I've seen like YouTube videos on this, like how people thought that it was like a robber emoji. I did too. I could have sworn it was like a robber emoji, but it was like it turned out that it wasn't. I just think it's funny to think about because like having like false memories and thinking you know something, but it's actually not that. It's just weird to me.
Yeah, so with this whole conspiracy thing, it's like people have a conspiracy where our timeline has like some way switched into a different one. So we remember like this had this in it, but since we switched timelines, then it's like everything is different. And so we have these memories of something that could have been real, but we just don't know it.
So to kind of stuck on what Jaylin said about different timelines, I did hear like this one theory where it was saying like the everybody is dead theory when like in 2012 the Mayans supposedly like predicted the end of the world and then everybody like instantly died at the same time somehow, and now we're all living on like this timeline where all of our like consciousness are like combined somehow. And that's like why the Mandela effect happened, because everybody is like in the same mindset and they're like rethinking things like a different way. So yeah.
Like that little theory, it kind of goes in like multiple timelines and like I don't know. It's just all confusing to me.
Yeah, it's kind of there's like so many different like examples of it. Like some people remember the Monopoly man having his little like one glass on his eye. Some people remember George with a tail or without a tail, Curious George. Like there's so many different things like that is so different. I find it really interesting because this type of subject has always like really troubled me because I've been like I would go back and like try to search through my own brain to see if I remember on if these things were true or not. And that really gets me thinking like if we did change timelines, like there could have been so much that changed that we just didn't notice.
My dad and I like to talk a lot about conspiracy theories. Like my dad and my sister, mostly when we're watching things like Archive 81 or Umbrella Academy. So, like, there's a lot of conspiracy theories around John F. Kennedy's death and, like, whether or not it was planned by the CIA or whether or not his killer was working alone or if he was working with a group. And same with, like, I think I saw somewhere that someone said that Elvis was cloned, which sounds kind of silly, but there are people who genuinely believe that.
Okay. Conspiracy theories. I do know about the whole clone thing, how every time a rapper goes to jail and they get out, everybody says that they're cloned, and it's just I find it very silly.
One conspiracy that really stands out to me is the Cecil Hotel conspiracy theory about I forgot her name, but about the girl that they found videos of her like running around the hotel, waving her hands around to see if there was things trying to find her. And then the fact that a few days later they found her in the fountain in this big water tank that was on top of the building. And they really, like, nobody actually knows on how she got there or how someone could have got there since it was nearly like a 50-pound door, and then they're carrying all this dead weight from this girl. Nobody knows how they would have got her into the inside of there. And what's it called, she was like the average type like small Asian woman, so no one could believe that she could actually lift the door and fall in herself. And the video that they have out there of her just waving her arms around in an elevator and looking, it just seemed like she was in like a distressed type of mood, and like she was trying to see if there was something coming after her. And there's like a lot of movies and shows about it and documentaries, and yet to this day, even though this happened so long ago, and it's like a big social media thing where it goes up and down because people are trying to constantly figure out what happened to this girl.
I heard what Miko said about like the JFK assassination and stuff. I read this thing where people were saying that the driver actually killed him instead of like him getting assassinated by like whoever they said he did. And they were like, editing the video of when like it shows like the driver turning around with the gun in his hand and stuff like that. Me personally, I don't think somebody could edit a video that old, but I mean, to each his own.
Some say maybe like from what I've heard though, but like I've been studying the JFK assassination though, and we're not sure maybe like if there's actual evidence of this still, maybe like, but some say that it was Lee Harvey Oswald that assassinated him. And also, have you heard of the Umbrella Man?
I think I've heard something about that. Can you elaborate a bit?
Some say maybe like that he was actually involved, and maybe like in that though. Some say that he organized it. Who knows?
Another conspiracy theory that I do know about is on the day of the JFK's assassination, there was a woman, there was an old lady that everyone saw in like almost every picture, which it kind of grew to be like, it kind of grew to be big because they were like, who is this old lady and why is she in every single picture that you will ever find? Some people say that they weren't, like, again, with the Mandela effect, that she wasn't in the pictures before, but now she is. So it's kind of like a big conspiracy theory now.
To piggyback on what Jaylin said, like we mentioned like earlier, like switching timelines or whatever. So like if like the whole conspiracy theory is true and we switch timelines, then maybe somehow we actually changed time. And if the lady wasn't there before and she is now, then like somehow she was in a whole different place in this timeline, but then maybe she didn't exist in the other.
I was just thinking that, speaking of switching timelines, something else about that is that there was this whole conspiracy theory for years that the world was going to end in 2012. So it's possible that if we switch timelines, that we also avoided that by changing time, switching timelines and stuff.
About the Mandela effect, it is unknown whether it could be debunked or be true, but I think simple explanation as to why some logos like the KitKat logo having a dash is whether the company was trying to be simpler with the letters to just combine it into a word, or like the Coca-Cola having like a dash and then replaced with a comma on it.
I agree. It could just be like, just the companies, just changing little things. And also like with the Monopoly Man having the little monocle thingy, things like that, I think are just us like, like the peanut guy. I think that's just us like mixing two similar characters that we see as similar together and then mixing them up. I think that's also could be one of the reasons for like the Mandela effect, or just thinking like with the robber emoji, like there's an emoji for literally every other thing. Why isn't there an emoji for a robber? Like our brain's just telling us things like this.
There was a part of like, there's always going to be something similar to that in the back of my brain because I really am wondering, like, what if this actually is something that could be fixed or something that could be explained? But then it's like all these years of us like wondering, like, how does this happen? Why hasn't any of the companies actually said anything about it? Why, like, the amount of times that someone has probably tweeted out or posted about it or has said something to them about it, they have not said a word on if it is true or not, which leads me to believe that they probably don't remember themselves on if the Monopoly Man had this little glass over his eye.
I agree with that, and also like how, but things like, how like everyone's been saying like, oh, how McDonald's like they just stopped with the whole Ronald McDonald thing, and how they just made no comments on that. It could also be a thing like that too, how they're just not, they're not gonna, they just don't want to really speak on it. Like how, like yeah, with McDonald's, how they just slowly and slowly just push Ronald McDonald out of the advertisement, and then people are saying on the internet like, what happened to this guy? And then they're not saying a word about it. I don't know. May in the chat said, how do we know that 2012 was 2012 though? Because aren't there different calendars? That is true. Different civilizations do have different calendars, so that is a very good like a thing. And also, I hear a lot of people say like, who's just been keeping track of time? Like, who just been keeping track of all of this? Yeah, man, like whose calendar is right? Like, how are we supposed to know? It's so many different calendars, and nobody just didn't get creative for nothing.
I was gonna start on what Jayvon said about like the like who's keeping track and who's right of time. Like when they started counting the days and the years, I know they had to skip a few. Like I know I sleep a lot. So I know somebody had to sleep through a day and miss a few. I know it's not perfect because they know whoever was keeping track, whoever had the stone tablet and was putting tally marks on it, they know they missed a few. I just know they did.
I want to stack on what AJ's saying. And she's talking about like time and stuff in the calendar, and to stack on what other people have said about it. I think like the idea of saying like which calendar is right, I don't think there's a certain calendar that's right. Like somebody may have like skipped a few. Like we've started counting at like a specific time, but who's to say that like this is a year and that's a day or that's a month? And I want to talk about like, the Mandela effect, and I want to build on what the definition is, and it's like an instance of like memory or something. And what if that's just like a way to like cover up what it really is? Like they were talking about timelines and like switching timelines. Maybe it's a parallel like universe or something. But it's really something that we aren't fully sure about. But that's really like the clue that we could get. But the thing is, what if it's covered up by saying that this is a psychological thing and this is something that we aren't able to like explain directly, but it's more like you just don't remember. And it's kind of like playing on our own psyche.
Hysan with the logic. Hit us with it for one time.
I mean, y'all do make some great facts and great points, and especially with the different timelines and all that. And I do agree with that 100%. I'm something more of a little timeline guy myself. I know a little bit about that. My opinion is that it makes sense, that it's reasonable to people that actually think about this type of stuff and how it affects them and how it affects the effect itself. Pretty much, I mean, it's an effect. There's some things we could change about it, and some things that we can't, and just have to accept it. Just move on and whatnot.
I think, I'm not fully sure, but I think I remember listening to like people talk about it. I think it's called the Mandela effect because it was either Nelson Mandela's death or it was him like being in jail. It was one of those two, and it was different for other people. And that was like where people thought that's like where it originated. Yeah, that.
Yeah, I just researched it, and a woman named Fiona reported that she remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison instead of dying the way he actually did. So they called it the Mandela effect since that became so big.
This been Power Your Story. Thank you for listening.
Power Your Story podcast is produced by Chicago high school students at the Creative Impostor Studios with production support from After School Matters. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Power Your Story Podcast, and visit our website at poweryourstorypodcast.com. Thank you for listening. Peace.